So today I have the privilege and the pleasure of teaching the Torah portion, Hi Sarah. So Hi Sarah in Hebrew means the life of Sarah, which is kind of interesting because this Torah portion is going to start off and it's really just going to be talking about Sarah being buried, her death. And so it's kind of an interesting name for a Torah portion to call it the life of Sarah when it's about death. But it's kind of curious because a lot of the times when someone does pass away, that is when we go back and we think about their life and what it means, and we have real reflections. So kind of a brief summary of this Torah portion. We're going to have Sarah dying. We're going to have Abraham seeking to find a burying place. He's going to purchase the first piece of land and that of this promise, and he will then bury Sarah in this cave of Machpelah. And then we're going to have him commission this unnamed servant, which we believe to be Eliezer because of a previous Torah portion, but he is unnamed in this Torah portion. This servant is commissioned to go find a bride for his son Isaac, and he goes out, and you're going to hear the story of how he goes and he meets Rebecca at the well, and how this whole story takes place. And then with Laban later, he repeats the story. Then she ends up coming back. They end up getting married, and then you're going to have a brief epilogue conclusion of how Abraham is going to be remarried again as well, and he will have a bunch of children, and then he also dies. And that's how the Torah portion ends. Then you're going to have, in the Haftorah portion, you have this story of how King David's old, and they find this interesting way. They're like, how do we keep him warm? And then the story will move to King Bathsheba and the prophet coming in, and then kind of on the side making this whole thing, hey, isn't your son Solomon supposed to be king? Yeah, you have this other usurper, coming along, saying he's king, like, you do this, I'm going to do this, and we'll remind good old David, what he previously promised you, and that your son is supposed to be king. And so when I'm looking at this Torah portion, and I look at the Haftorah portion, what I found to be the connection in my mind, and what I think the Torah and the Haftorah are trying to teach us, is that in death and in people dying, we have this void that is kind of left in us, and it's missing, and we're looking to fill that. And the way that we do that, the correct way I think the Torah is trying to teach us, is that we pass on the torch, as it were to say, to a future generation, right? And they come and they fill that void that the death has lost, and bring about a sort of live through you sort of way, I guess. I don't know how to say that right. So in this, I want to talk about like what traits I think these Torah portions bring out that we are to instill into this future generation to bring about to where, because the fact is we're all going to die, and if we don't plan ahead, then everything you've taught, everything you believed in, everything dies with you, and then that's sad. That truly is sad, and it will be lost. But if we can instill it into our children and into the next generation, it will continue to live, and it will continue to thrive and grow and do more. So in this Torah portion, I think specifically we have the trait of kindness mentioned. That we have that over and over and over as you read this story, that that Abraham sends this servant, and he's like, he's going to go before you with kindness and truth, And then the servant over and over again, he's like, God didn't, God did. He provided this miraculous story, this miraculous, like he's praying, and before he even finished praying, there's Rebecca doing exactly like he said with this whole story with this camels. And you find like, he's like, God, you are so kind and so true. And he's looking for that same truth and kindness in this future bride, which he finds in Rebecca, who goes out of her way, right? He prays, God, if she'd give me a drink, and like if she'll also water my camels, which is a lot. Like that's a lot of work. Like I don't know, like if you're drawing a 25-pound bucket of water or something up out of the ground, and you're talking about 10 camels. That's a lot of water, a lot of work. Like she went out of her way to show kindness to a stranger she doesn't even know. And I think that is what we should be looking for and instilling into our children for that next generation. And it's kind of interesting in this story how the servant relates the story twice, And the thing he leaves out when he's speaking to like Laban is he leaves out kindness. He sees Laban as a man who he cares about in the future. He cares about that family relationship. He cares about money, He looks like that. Like you see, like he's looking for the gold and stuff. So the servant kind of changes the story. He goes, oh, I'm all about the family, like Abraham. We're family, you remember? Where he's looking for a son from the family. He's looking, hey, by the way, Abraham's rich. He's super rich. God blessed him in everything. And you know what? He gave everything to this son, all his wealth to the son. If this girl will come, she'll be set, But what he was really looking for on the side when he sees Rebecca, or not Rebecca, sorry, Rachel? No. Yeah, Rebecca, I had it right. No, but Rebecca, he sees her was that kindness. That's really what he was looking for. But when you see it on the other side, he kind of does that. I think it's interesting to look at the discrepancies in the stories and find like why does he highlight certain aspects and not. And so I think in this that we're looking for kindness. And so I want to talk about a little bit about how we distill kindness and truth, that we grow up actually teaching our kids the Torah so that they can pass it on, and they can teach their kids the Torah as well. And doing it in a way that, like, you have this whole thing in the previous story portion with Sodom and Gomorrah, where God says, should I hide things from Abraham, seeing that, he's going to become great, and I'm going to bless him, and he's going to become a great nation. He says, and seeing that he's going to teach his children, and he says, like, you have that justice and judgment. But I think that's another way, honestly, of saying of kindness and truth, It's kind of saying that faithfulness, that truth, that steadfastness that doesn't leave, and that kindness where you look to people who are in need, whether it's someone you know, someone you don't know, and you're able to go out of your way and show it. And I kind of want to give like an example of even like Abby. I heard a story of my little girl that she used to, when we would go to a restaurant, she would save half her food, and she would box it up and put it in a thing, and the first homeless person she saw, she would give it to them. And I think that's remarkable. No one told her to do this. No one did this, but she went out of her way to show kindness. And I think that's a remarkable trait to do. And I think we should also go out of our way to set things up in our lives. Like us personally, our family, we've made a jar. And in this jar, we've been putting just any spare change we have, or if we find change on the ground, you find 10 cents or whatever, we just fill this jar up. And then when the jar's full, we find someone who's in need, or just some random person who, and we give it to them, and we try to bless other people and show kindness to them that, God's been very kind to us, and we want to do this, and we try to get the children along and bring them and say, like, who do you think we should help? What do you think we should do, and try to get that way they're in the mindset of going about and trying to help other people themselves and doing this. And I want to talk about also just like not only being kind to people we know, not only being kind to strangers, but I think you have a clear message that Yeshua is teaching that we should be kind to our enemies, that we should, if you only, he says in the Sermon on the Mount, if you only do good, you only say hi, you only, greet people who are kind to you, what more are you doing than everybody else? Even the wicked do that. So we need to go out of our ways and instilling virtues of kindness and truth in our children, even to our enemies, because they're going to look and they're going to hear and they're going to see, how do you treat your enemies? And that's what they're going to do. And then I would like to talk about this revive itself. I think we can do this into our children and have this family thing, but also this assembly. I think Revive here is a very special place, but hopefully further in the future. But eventually we're going to get older and pass away, and the eldership is going to go away. And everything I think that our community has to stand for, and I think our community does have a real steps in trying to be a community together and distill kindness, like when we had that ice and stuff and everything came through. People really tried to make sure people had what they needed, and that people weren't doing this and going out of their way and doing this. And we had this whole story with Nathan last week. Like, he's been going out of his way trying to check on people who are sick and make sure they're okay and to visit them. And I know we have a lot of people who have kindness in them. And as we see these little children growing up, we need to look like which ones are displaying these qualities of kindness, truth, faithfulness, maybe have wisdom like Solomon, able to discern, who's telling the truth, who's right, who's able to do this, and really push these people into beginning roles of leadership, finding something for them to do in the church, whether it's just carrying offering baskets, or something, but find little things that you can maybe start getting them to where they're able to do this, because when it's all said and done, these are the things that are the most important to bring on to the next generation, maybe not being the best speaker or this, which is what I think a lot of the world looks to, but to find people who really exhibit virtues, that we're doing for the next generation. And so, if we really want this to continue, we really want this to keep going, we want Revive to continue, we want our children to do this, now's the time to do these virtues and to instill it and to be examples and to make sure. And that's all I have to say.